Just the taste of homegrown veg is just something else, and seeing other people enjoy it, when you take a bruschetta that you've made from your tomatoes and basil, when you take that to a potluck dinner for your friends and they're just like, holy hell, this is the best thing I've ever eaten.
This is The Producers. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Disillusioned with conventional farming practices, Rhiannon Phillips set off on a journey to make a change. She started her own farm, Mountains Gourmet, where she is committed to growing healthy produce for the residents of the Blue Mountains in New South Wales.
So my name is Rhiannon Phillips and I run Mountains Gourmet. I'm in the Darugin-Gundungurra area of the Blue Mountains. So I'm located in the mid-mountains. I have a market garden here in Lawson, and then I also have a small sort of workshop, micro farm market garden space in Bullaburra, which is one suburb up. And then I sort of run workshops around the Blue Mountains and do consultations for private landowners and that sort of thing as well. So all throughout the mountains, yeah. And then I service some restaurants in Sydney. I am in an area where there's not a lot of farming land, so there is a need for more small agriculture happening in the Blue Mountains. There's also a need for people to connect to where their food comes from. So because we don't have farms on our doorstep to go and look at, or you don't drive past farms, people don't have that connection as much, but they really want it. So I'm really fortunate to be in an area where people are very open-minded and generally want to do the best for the area and for nature in general. So they're really happy to see an organic farm or a regenerative farm working within their area. So that's really unique.
Rhiannon grew up in the Blue Mountains where she was amazed and inspired by her parents' veggie garden.
I was super lucky and I grew up on like a small patch of acreage in the Blue Mountains, actually just down the road from where I'm farming now. And my mum still owns that property. And I remember, I think I was probably in year like kindergarten or year one, so around five years old, and my dad came up with this huge zucchini, one of those ones that's been forgotten about for 3 days and it's just quadrupled in size. And I was just so stoked and I took it in for show and tell, and I just remember being so excited about this massive zucchini, and Dad made up this story about something to do with lightning and that's why it was so big, and I believed it, I reckon, until I was about 21. I was like, yeah, it's definitely the lightning. It must be the nitrogen. And then I put two and two together when I started farming myself. I was like, oh no, this happens a lot. So I went straight from high school to university and I did a Bachelor of Animal and Veterinary Bioscience. So it's pretty much an agriculture degree majoring in animal studies, so animal production, livestock production. And then once I finished that, I travelled for a little while. So I, did a bit of time backpacking in South America. And then I actually converted a bus to a tiny home and travelled around Australia for about 18 months. Yeah, that was amazing. But the main reason for that travel was that I came out of this degree and I was just like, so they expect me to be a farm consultant, but I have no actual farm experience. So I ended up just travelling around Australia and working on as many different farms as I could. Within that 18 months. And yeah, that's sort of what I was doing. And then I realised that I hated conventional agriculture. Not hated, I just realised all of the problems happening in the industry and realised that I really wanted to be working towards a better future for agriculture. So I ended up getting a role as a farm manager on a mixed enterprise farm, a small farm in the Hawkesbury, and yeah, sort of went from there on the actual organic journey.
Rhiannon lets the seasons and climate decide what grows in her garden.
I've just got mixed vegetables, so mixed seasonal veg. I did have a small flock of chickens that I was running as well, but it just sort of became too much to handle with all the foxes we have up here. So yeah, mostly just organic veg depending on what's in season, try and give everything a go. So at the moment I'm looking at some freshly planted rows of silver beet, kale and broccoli. They're tiny little seedlings at the moment. Next to that, I've got 5 rows of garlic, so that'll be ready in December, late November. And then crops that I'm actually harvesting at the moment, I've got silver beet, kohlrabi, parsley, kale, turnips, radishes. There's a few cover crop rows in there, bean sprouts, broccolini, all of those sorts of things, leeks. There's a few factors that come into it. Obviously what's in season and what I can get my hands on in terms of good seed, but also my client base. So I'm working closely with our local co-op to try and make sure that there's no food waste. So I'm planting things that have sold well the year before in that season. So we've found during summer, cos lettuce sells really well, but coming into winter, it just doesn't sell, even though I can grow it with our season. So I'm really trying to make sure that with the limits of making sure I'm rotating crops, that I am just growing products that will sell, to limit food waste, and also just to make sure that I'm maximising the bed space that I have.
Uninspired by conventional farming, Rhiannon has found benefits in organic and regenerative practices.
When I was up, I was in the Atherton Tablelands in a town called Evelyn. So it's a big potato area. And I was working on a potato farm there. I was driving the tractors, helping with harvest and planting and that sort of stuff. Really, really enjoyed the experience because I was with a whole heap of other backpackers and whatnot. It was funny, like people were like, "Oh, you're Australian. What are you doing working on a farm?" It's like, yeah, it's so strange that we do that. Anyway, the farmer who owned the property, and he owned multiple properties that he was farming, he was just working so much, it was ridiculous. So I started to chat to him about, the amount of hours he was doing, because every time I looked out the window, there was a tractor going through the paddock at it could be 11 p.m, it could be 2 a.m. So there was always a tractor going, and he was the only one really working other than us backpackers. And so I just realised how much he was working and started to chat to him about why he had to work so much and why he had to farm so intensively. And it turns out that he was selling his potatoes direct to Coles and Woolies, the major supermarkets, and he was getting a ridiculously low income from these potatoes, to the point where by the time he paid everyone and he got paid, he couldn't even pay off one of his tractors. So he had to have another farm in Mareeba with pumpkins, and they were a little bit more profitable. But yeah, so there was that. There was the fact that he was just getting so ripped off, which really sucked. So that made me a little bit bitter about the industry, not from the farming perspective, but from the buyer perspective. And then on top of that, he was telling me about how his father, so that was his father's farm, he was a 3rd generation potato farmer, that his father had died at 55 from many cancers, from the amount of chemical that they had to use. And the reason he was telling me this is because he's passing me this backpack sprayer at the time, and he goes, "Have you got your gloves? Have you got your goggles? Have you got your mask on? Rah, rah. Make sure you're wearing all of this because my dad died from this." And I'm just like, what the hell? This is ridiculous. And it was just so sad to see that it was just accepted that you might die in the short term, really. It's not even the long term, from all these chemicals, but that's just the way we do it. And it was just, I could see that the system was just so broken. Yeah, so that's really what, shifted my view.
Growing veg is one thing, but managing a business is a far greater challenge.
I always had the thought that I would love to run my own business, but I was managing a small farm in the Hawkesbury at the time, and we got flooded out 4 times within 18 months. So we lost the whole market garden and a lot of our pasture and all of that sort of stuff. And it's just one of the cons of farming on the river flats. There's really big highs and big lows, so to say. And it just got to the point where I thought this just isn't sustainable as a business model. I could see that the owner of the farm was losing money doing this, even though he just had the passion for it. So I thought there's got to be higher ground. And I just thought, well, why am I'm too busy managing everyone else's farm when I could just do it myself. So I was really, really lucky. I sort of made the decision to resign, and they actually ended up closing the market garden down in the Hawkesbury down there after some advice of it's probably going to flood again. And I was so lucky that I had a friend of the family who's elderly up here in Lawson, who had a 1 acre paddock that just wasn't getting used. Her son-in-law was mowing it for her every week, and I just knocked on her door one of the mornings and said, can I put a garden in there? And she said, yeah, sure, you could have a garden. And then I don't think Marjorie knew. She's such a lovely lady. She's so gentle and soft, but, another row went in and another row went in and another row went in, and I've worked my way all the way down the paddock. Now there's 50 rows. And when I got halfway, she goes, gosh, this garden's getting bigger and bigger. I thought you just wanted a small garden. And I said, I sort of stopped and said, is this a problem? Like, do you want me to stop? Then she was like, no, use it all. The less mowing, the better. And she loves a few little veggies here and there. But yeah, I was just really lucky that I stepped straight into having access to land, which is so unheard of for young people. And I also was able to pick up clients within the first week because the farm that I was managing had closed down. So I could just sort of transfer all of those clients over. Yeah, it was all the stars aligned. I was very lucky.
Tending to the farm first thing in the morning is vital, whether protecting from frost in winter or picking before the sun rises in summer.
I mean, at the moment it's sort of winter, so it's coming into the slower season. So for winter, I'm coming in the morning. I have some frost covers on some of the more sensitive veg, like lettuces and pea shoots and things, and I take the frost covers off so they don't bake in the sun. In the peak season, I am here very early in the morning. I'm trying to pick before the sun hits all of the vegetables. So I'll do a pick in the morning. Monday morning is my big harvest day where I take it down to Sydney. So I'll spend about 4 hours harvesting. Sometimes I'll have a volunteer with me, which is amazing. About 4 hours harvesting, pack it all into the van and then head down to Sydney, drop it off at my client. And then I actually do a short gardening class for that client up on their rooftop as well. I have installed some little raised garden beds up there. Yeah, so a lot of their staff, it's a big corporate company, so they're trying to sort of engage the staff in other activities as much as they can. So yeah, really lucky to have that relationship with them. So Mondays is my favourite day. I get to go down to Sydney, just have a bit of a break from the farm and the mountains, interact with heaps of people down up on the rooftop and teach them about different veg and why this veg is shooting and why this veg has fungus on it and that sort of stuff. And then, come home back to the plot, unload all of the compost that I pick up from that corporate company as well, unload all of that, turn all the compost and then pass out, basically.
Farming has opened Rhiannon's eyes to whole systems thinking and its impact on all of us.
Farming has really just opened my eyes to whole systems thinking and even human health, realising how much of an impact agriculture has on human health and how, in general, Western health has sort of developed or degraded in the last, 50 years. And just understanding how much, food is medicine and what you eat really is what you are. And the lack of understanding that people have, it's changed my life because I went from that lack of understanding. I was, at uni and I was taught that this is the way we do it. And it's just so funny now to think that none of that stuff that I learned, we were doing chemical ratios for paddocks and how much sulfur would you add to this and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, it's so broken. But at the time I thought that was the only way. So it's really interesting, to have a change of mindset. That's how it's changed my life. Change of mindset for sure. Just the taste of homegrown veg is just something else, and seeing other people enjoy it. When you take a bruschetta that you've made from your tomatoes and basil, when you take that to a potluck dinner for your friends and they're just like, holy hell, this is the best thing I've ever eaten. What's in it? It's just homegrown veg and salt and olive oil, It's so nice to see people enjoy that.
Following the success of her Blue Mountains farm, Rhiannon is looking to grow in a different region and climate as well.
I'm at the stage where I sort of want to expand and maybe even have a bit of a scenery change for me. So I'm thinking about probably trying to train helping train someone to look after this garden here in Lawson, and I'll maybe think about setting up another one somewhere else where I can also have a similar model, educating and that sort of stuff, but be producing, food somewhere else in a community that might enjoy that. So I think that's what's next. I'm constantly trying to develop my own, education and the way that I can help others learn as well. So lots of courses, I think, lots of learning.
Working with nature and the elements is at the heart of what Rhiannon does.
It's just the diversity. I'm so lucky that I actually border on bushland. So I've always got, 3 or 4 kookaburras sitting up in the trees watching me and waiting for a mouse to run out of the compost. And I get to have my little dog with me every day at work. And yeah, it's just I love being outside. So it's really nice. I was saying to a friend the other day, I cannot imagine working, in an office every day or having to work behind a computer all the time. I love being outside. And even though it's quite hard when it's rainy and cold and whatnot, it's still probably a better option for me. It's such a diverse community that it opens up. I'm very lucky to have such a tight community here in the Blue Mountains, and everybody is happy to support small businesses. And then as well, on the other hand, actually within the industry, you meet a lot of other permaculturalists or regenerative agriculture. I'm in a regenerative agriculture mentorship program as well through Southern Cross University. So I've met a lot of other farmers that are working on a different scale to me. They might be working with livestock on 300 acres, or they might be, carbon farming. But within the industry, it's just amazing to see other people on the sort of regenerative journey or the sustainable and organic journey. So I love that part about what I do.
Rhiannon's commitment to better farming practices is giving her local community access to incredible fruit and vegetables, as well as fostering a better understanding of how to fuel their bodies. This is The Producers, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of producers, farmers, makers and growers, the true lifeblood of the food industry. Follow us on Instagram at Producers Podcast, or email us at producerspodcast@deepintheweeds.com.au.